All right, patch notes are out, and I'm pretty sure many of you are thinking or guessing what are my thoughts. And pretty much up front, these wand adjustments or these wand buffs, however you want to look at it, definitely A+ material coming in October. So what we're going to do is we're going to quickly run down the list, give my thoughts, and really highlight the ones that are really, from my opinion, going to be important. So without further ado, let's get into it. So first up, increase movement distance for normal attacks 1, 2, and 3. This is probably just a quality of life, though I'll be interested to see how this interacts with wand lovers. And really for this patch, how wand lovers is going to be handled in the future is probably going to be one of the big questions. Increase motion speed for normal attack 3. This is great for a couple of reasons. A, just because it's going to be an increase in DPS without changing potency. The other thing is, right now, normal attack 3 is the big detriment to accessing wand attack EX, or your 4th normal attack, because right now it's like 279 DPS. I imagine they'll cut it down 2 to 4 frames. 4 frames would make it equal to normal attack 1 and 2. And so you're looking at a DPS between, off the top of my head, let's say 296 to 310, depending on how much they shave off of the current frames. Additionally, wand normal attack 3 gets a forward guard point. And as you know, for wand, any guard point that is triggered results in a wand explosion. So what's great about this is that it gives added protection. Of course, it's going to depend on how great of a guard point it is. You're going to add another 72 potency from the Photonic Fury element explosion if you're matching elements. So this is big because it's going to potentially increase your DPS further as you chain into your wand EX attack. Increase movement distance for wand weapon actions. Now this one is going to depend on exactly what they mean. Do they mean the wand parry animation when you're not hitting anything, so essentially that dash animation, or do they just mean when you are countering through wand parry counter is going to increase the distance that you can travel? Either way, it's likely going to be a nice quality of life change. In addition, the wand weapon action is also going to have its guard period, I say guard receptive, but basically the time in which you can guard and counter extended. Once again, this is more of a quality of life. For those who might have difficulties using wand parry, this is going to make things a little easier. Now, the next one is interesting. Updated wand weapon actions generate a period of invulnerability upon a successful guard. Now, there's 2 parts to this, and I'm not too sure if the second part is actually going to be satisfied, but the first part is obvious. When you guard with wand, you will now have invulnerability to where you will not get interrupted. If anyone has tried to parry or counter Ahm's Vera's double kicks, you'll notice if you counter the first kick, that second kick gets through and hits you before you can actually parry. So what this update is going to allow you to do is essentially avoid that. The question becomes the second part. Is this also going to give invulnerability after a successful wand parry counter, or is it only after a successful guard? That's one of the things that, of course, in these patch notes we don't know, but we'll figure out on October 5th. If it does, this opens up a lot of interesting applications that we're going to get to when we start talking about Photon Arts. Expanded attack range for wand's Photonic Fury. Now this one is likely another quality of life, but definitely one that should have existed since the beginning. This one likely targets the Photon Art wave crash, which we'll get into later, but essentially when you're in mobbing situations, wave crash is our AoE attack for wands. The tricky part or the problem is when you hit enemies with wave crash, if they are at a certain distance away from you, the Photonic Fury will not proc. So you might be hitting 6 enemies, the 2 enemies next to you get the Photonic Fury explosions, but the 4 enemies that are further away don't. This is a problem just because it lowers your damage to those enemies, but also lowers things like building Photon Blast or building compound technique gauges. Speaking of compound techniques, in the notes they say fuse technique gauge accumulation, but essentially wand Photonic Fury is going to increase the amount it builds. This is, once again, it's another quality of life, but it's another big one because one of the big issues with wand is that it builds compounds slowly, and right now compounds are a big factor in Techter damage like it is force. The difference is force can build this thing up like a machine gun. And we're talking about you're gonna get a compound technique if you're in the right situation every minute, maybe even faster. Where for Techter, you're looking at specifically wand. It gets a little faster with talus, but not that much of a difference compared to rod. You're looking at around 2 minutes. When I'm doing my Kavaris purple runs, you might have noticed my photon blast gauge with the add-on skills and my class skills feels faster than my compound technique. So this is the quality of life. The value of this is going to depend on how much it allows photonic furies to build. If it's significant and we can start cutting into getting our compound techniques up every minute or close to a minute, definitely a plus. If it's 30 seconds, I mean, of course it's great, but likely needs to be more. So of course, we'll see how all of this progresses on the 5th. Relaxed cancellation timing of weapon actions for wand technique activations. This one is a quality of life as well, but I do want to highlight it because it does, based on how it reads, of course, once again, we'll see in practice, it does cover a lot of issues that wand has, specifically casting techniques in general. It leaves you very open for attacks if you do not time it well. So essentially, at face value, what this is going to do is say after you cast, let's say foyer, you'll be able to cancel it into, let's say, a step dodge or a counterattack earlier. The other thing that this is also helpful for is that with compound techniques, we have elemental mechanics. One of the big issues, especially when you're fighting with a very aggressive boss, is that getting off that megasphere, getting off that foyer brand, whatever that mechanic is, can be very, very difficult because you have to find the right timing and you have to make sure you don't get hit. And then if you do use the gimmick, you then have to use another element to switch back to make sure you're at the appropriate wand element. So there's a lot of technique juggling that even though right now Techter doesn't use a lot of techniques, when you do use them, they kind of put you in a very tricky predicament to where sometimes you just don't have time to use those mechanics and they just go wasted. So definitely quality of life. This might be very important depending on how those cancellation timings actually play out. Now these next 4 really aren't anything special. Photon blasts are getting buffed across the board. So increased potency, not a big deal. Everyone's getting it. So it's likely going to be even and not really change anything. Expanded attack range of the wand photon blast. Now this is important because one of the great things about wand photon blast is that it tracks and you can cover a great distance. So if they've expanded the attack range, chances are you're going to be able to travel further. They increase the movement speed, so not only are you traveling further or can travel further to the target, you can also move faster. And probably the best one of these quality of life changes, outside of potency increases, of course, is going to be the turning performance. Wand Photon Blast has some tricky parts when you're traveling. How you line up against the enemy can kind of push you out of position, which can put you in situations to where you might not be hitting the weak spot or you're going to be in areas you don't want to be. So the turning performance is great because it allows you to more easily redirect where you want to be and making sure you're getting that damage off in the most effective spot. Of course, once again, how much turning performance, we'll find out on October 5th. Now, the Photon Arts. This is where things really get interesting and where things are very, very important. Specifically, Swift Smash. Of course, what we're going to get is increased potency. Now, this will be the second time that Swift Smash gets buffed. If you go back to one of my earlier videos, I forget, I guess when they buffed Swift Smash the first time, I had called out that the increased potency wasn't really enough, but it had other issues. So let's get rid of the small things, quality of life. We've got relax, sidestep canceling for both charged and uncharged attacks, in addition to weapon action canceling. So chances are this is going to happen at different parts of Swift Smash. For those who don't know, when you activate Swift Smash, whether it's charged or uncharged, you can cancel it before the swinging animation. So there might be some relaxed timings of when you can cancel, though based on some of the buffs coming down later in the list, I doubt that. This is probably going to be after you attack an enemy and you have that recovery frames where you're most vulnerable. Chances are these relaxed cancellations for sidestep and weapon action or wand parry are likely going to influence and benefit after you hit an enemy. Another quality of life change, increased movement distance for both charged and uncharged. Now here is the biggest thing, probably of all of these patch notes and adjustments for wand. Added a forward guard point to both charged and uncharged attacks. And so if you trigger that guard point, it does another photonic fury. So without any potency increases, if you just add another 72 potency from that Photonic Fury, Swift Smash DPS goes from 347 to what, 380 if I'm doing the math in my head. The other great thing about this is this helps with timing. Now you can charge Swift Smash and you can time when you want to release it, knowing that you'll take a hit, which will be hit by that guard point, similar to Soaring Blade's Blade Arts parry. Essentially, it's very similar. It's the same concept, they just do different things. The interesting thing really is the uncharged attack, because believe it or not, given potency and given frames, this increases Swift Smash uncharged DPS when you trigger that guard point by about 90 DPS more or less. So as you can imagine, you can chain uncharged Swift Smash into a charged Swift Smash if the timing is correct, and then release it when you're going to take a hit, go into your Wand Normal 3, which now has a guard point, which then goes into your Wand EX attack, which has 2 additional guard points. And of course, and I forgot to cover this, but it was kind of a given, they've improved the Wand EX normal attack guard points. So now that you have these guard points on both versions of Swift Smash, you can essentially go into Swift Smash, Normal 3, EX attack, and every attack has guard frames. That effectively makes you hard to hit during these situations. And so Swift Smash, I'm predicting this, is likely going to be the de facto single target Photon Art now. These guard points, the movement distance, the cancel timings, they pretty much give us everything when it comes to bossing. You can look at my Kavar's purple run. The bosses like to teleport, they like to move around. Those are perfect situations to charge Swift Smash and then release, guarding that attack and doing additional damage. And if you remember, Swift Smash is a pre-charged move. So if you can time it perfectly, instead of it being 130 frames, 60 frames for the charge, 70 frames for the attack animation, it's effectively 70 frames. So you can imagine all of that potency with the guard frame and doing pre-charge and doing good time Swift Smashes is a big boom to the DPS. So if anything, adding guard points to Swift Smash is the biggest thing in these patch notes. And now let's finish it off with Wave Crash, increased potency. No surprise there, it needed it. Relaxed sidestep, cancel timing. This one is interesting because for those who might not be familiar, Wave Crash is a 2-part attack animation. You can cancel in between the first and second attack with either a sidestep or a weapon action. So I'm interested to see if that relaxed cancellation timing is going to be for the in-between attacks, in addition to after the attack is completed. My guess is that yes, it's going to be for both. Additionally, they've provided super armor for Wave Crash. Essentially, it prevents launch and knockback during the attack motion, or the active motion as they say. This is likely quality of life for mobbing, because if you imagine when you're mobbing and you're just going unga boonga, you're gonna get hit, you're gonna get interrupted. This is basically going to prevent that. Now, of course, it doesn't have guard points, which likely communicates that Swift Smash is your single target and Wave Crash is now your mobbing, which has always been, but now it's more quality of life around mobbing. And now this last one, when activated on the ground, aerial markers will no longer appear after the attack. I'm actually not sure about this one. I'm gonna have to go back when I get some time and figure out what's going on. It might be something that I've been playing WoN for the last year and some change that I just never noticed it. So not too sure what that's all about. It might just be something to remove because it was just junk. Now, one of the things that isn't discussed in these notes that I do want to call attention to, and this is more of a we'll see what happens, is what's going on with WoN lovers. Because for those who may not be familiar with WoN lovers, it's an active skill for WoN. And when you activate it, it gives you super armor. In addition, it gives guard points to your normal attacks. So I'm talking about the original WoN lover skill, not line force, that allows tracking where you can zip to the targets and track vertically. Why this is interesting is because when we look at Swift Smash, it has super armor. Not only does it have super armor when they say relax hip stop, it also has now guard points. Normal attack 3 naturally now has a guard point. Wand attack EX has guard points. Wave Crash doesn't get guard points, and WoN lovers wouldn't give guard points to Wave Crash. So the only things that truly benefit from the original WoN lover skill, not line force, is normal attack 1 and normal attack 2. So I wonder if they're going to redo the original wand lever skill. You can leave line force the same, but the super armor and the guard frames don't really seem very beneficial anymore. So I wonder if they're just going to get rid of the original wand lever skill and make line force a skill, or if they're going to do something else. So that's the thing I'm very interested to see, because right now you've got a lot of protective options when it comes to bossing, when it comes to single target, which is really all that you need. The other thing that's going to be interesting is really, once we get the data, understanding these DPS differences. Because if you guard point with Uncharged Swift Smash, based on my numbers, if you just add 72 potency to the current Uncharged Swift Smash, which I believe is 184. So basically add 144 to that and then divide it by 47, which is its frames. Times that by 60, you get your DPS. That is getting fairly close to wand counter. Now, if you're looking at frame data, a lot of them will have wand parry listed differently than wand guard, which gives it an inaccurate DPS more or less, just because you can only get counter with guard. So you kind of have to lower the DPS slightly. I think you're looking at like 430 to 440 DPS. And so now when you're increasing the potency for things like Swift Smash and you're giving them guard frames, they are looking to increase into that territory, unless they do some weird potency distributions between charged and uncharged with Swift Smash, to where we're getting some overlap. So that's also going to be interesting to see how these new buffs play with wand counter, which is probably still going to be our strongest attack, but it's not going to have as much space as it did. So other than that, in a nutshell, for Techter, I think this is pretty good and what we needed. Of course, is it going to allow us to compete with the high levels like Katana and so on and so forth? No, but it is going to free us up to where we shouldn't have to struggle like we have been. And to some degree, with these potency increases, might be able to allow us to be successful without jet boots. For those who might be paying attention, you can clear Kavara's Purple Solo, Techter Fighter, Techter Force, but you have to be running 100% min-max. You have to be running the highest variants, gotta be running all of the units with the highest damage, which makes you a glass cannon. That gives you enough time to clear the content. If you're a little off, you're going to lose out on time and you're not gonna be able to clear. So these changes hopefully puts us in a spot where we don't have to worry about that, and it's all about execution. But other than that, we will find out more on October 5th, where we get to play with these changes. So until next time, catch you later.